This is Angel Coleman. Thank you for reading It's in the Blood. Welcome to Book 3. And this is Malachi DeClue. At this time we want to dedicate the series to Tyler Hines of Grand, Michigan.
Prologue. Pausing for a moment, as he allowed a mouthful of water to settle in, between his teeth and within the crevices of his tongue, he had heard the all-too-familiar shrieking voice that had sharpened his explosive nerves. Backing up slowly, away from his water dish, he quietly searched out the direction that the harsh voice was coming from. Walking out of the kitchen and into the hallway, he quickly found the source of the threatening atmosphere, standing at the end of the hall, between Lucifer's room and his master's room. As light-footed as he could, to prevent his tags from rattling against one another, he walked slowly, within the shadows casted on the wall. Never in his life had he felt so angry. Violent. He felt violent for the first time in his life. For the first time he had felt his blood pressure causing his nose and ears to feel as though they were pulsating. Pulsating with each step. Jason McKim had moved into the home about 2 years prior. He had never felt the positive atmosphere, among his own siblings, as he found himself in when he moved in with the DeClues. Rather than making himself part of the natural flow of love within the home, like most people would, Jason allowed the differences to turn into resentment. Then, over those 2 years, had began to allow his anger to vent towards Nicole anytime that everyone else was gone. Now, at the age of 6, Jason had found himself snapping at Nicole as he looked up at her with his hands rested on his hips. "Now you listen here, little boy," Nicole retorted, "you will never again raise your voice to me in my home. Do you understand me?" Nicole asked as she bent forward to look the Tyke eye to eye. Never in Nicole's life did she feel a buildup of frustration anger her so much. Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, and herself agreed a couple of years prior to take in the child that was orphaned when he came out to be the only survivor of a serious car wreck. An accident that killed his parents, 2 older siblings, and a younger brother, leaving himself to be the only one left within his family. Malachi, Ronnie, Eddie, and Nicole had heard about the accident and then instantly opened their hearts and home to the poor child. A year later Eddie adopted the child to be his own. "You're not my mom. You can't tell me what to do," Jason yelled again. This time Jason moved his left hand, from his hip, and pointed his finger at her. And Eddie isn't my daddy. He can't tell me what to do either." Lowering himself down closer to the floor, Spud remained within the shadows, and then flinched quickly as the form of the shadow changed when Jason took his hand off of his hip. As he inched himself closer to the lad, about 3 feet behind his legs, he decided that just one more outburst, from Jason, would be his trigger to jump. Suddenly, in what seemed like slow motion, Nicole had reached out towards Jason, and then instantaneously the boy swung his hand out towards hers as he attempted to hit it. Quickly lunging forward, Spud landed his entire body weight on the back of his legs, just behind the knees, causing him to fall forward. As Jason fell, he bounced his face off of Nicole's legs and the wall next to them. Landing on his chest, Jason quickly turned over and into a sitting position so that he could see what had hit him, only finding the household pet. With tears filling his eyes, Jason swung his balled-up fist towards the small dog and then missed. Jumping up onto Jason's legs, Spud quickly lunged forward again to grab a hold of the arm that had just come within inches of the tip of his nose. Now, with extreme anger, he tightly held the kid's arm within his jaws as he also quickly jabbed his back legs into the soft tissues of Jason's stomach. Then, jumped again, towards the boy's throat as he let go of his arm. This time wrapping his teeth lightly around the kid's neck and then began to growl. Frightened, Jason held still as Nicole bent forward and carefully picked Spud up off of his chest. "Good job, boy," Nicole said as she pet the top of the dog's head, "good job." Then, as Nicole continued to hold the dog, she looked down towards the scared child. "Jason. Next time I won't stop him." Chapter 1. I can't believe how cold it is today, Belinda whispered as she slowly pulled the quilt off of her head. We can see our breath. Through the cool bedroom air, Belinda peered at the alarm clock, knowing beforehand that it wasn't yet time to get up. This knowledge was awfully clear as the sun shined brightly through the frosted bedroom window, illuminating hers and Ronnie's breath. I know. I think that the cold air is what has kept me awake all night. Ronnie responded as he slowly turned over onto his back. Turning his head, he looked into Belinda's face as she rested herself up on one elbow looking over him. As Ronnie's eyes met hers, he softly smiled at her as he watched a soft-looking cloud of steam roll out of her mouth. At the sight, he offered a quiet chuckle and then quickly swallowed it away. What's so funny? Belinda asked as she pulled one hand out from under the covers and then rested it on Ronnie's bare chest. As she waited for his hesitant answer, she began to slowly trace a circle, with her finger, around Ronnie's left nipple. Just the steam coming out of your mouth. Looks like you're smoking a cigarette. With this response, Ronnie repositioned his right arm to where Belinda could rest her head on it, rather than on the palm of her left hand. Immediately, Belinda followed into the gesture as she softly rested her face on his chest. As they kept eye contact with one another, Belinda continued to rub her finger in a clockwise direction, causing the nipple to pucker up in the cool air. Getting a little excited, I see, Belinda said as the texture of the skin tightened up under her touch. I wonder if it's too early to get anything else excited today. As Belinda continued to flirt, she slowly pulled her hand downward, under the quilt, slowly across his belly button, then softly rested her hand within the thick coarse hair above his manhood. Quickly, Belinda realized that Ronnie was not aroused and then, again, attempted to make eye contact with him, only to find that he had closed his eyes and dozed off. With this, Belinda retracted her arm as she softly draped it over his chest. I love you, honey, Belinda whispered and then quietly found herself falling back to sleep as well. Beep. Beep beep. 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 Quickly sitting up, as the bedroom alarm clock began to blare, Ronnie quickly realized that he was now alone in the room. With this, he also could see that the sun was fading, as the street light, outside the window, was beginning to flicker on. As the alarm rang out loudly, Belinda quickly opened up the door and then walked in, to find Ron reaching toward the clock. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't mean to leave that on. With this said, Belinda walked in and sat down next to Ronnie as she lightly hugged him from the side. I've gotta make sure that I stay awake really late into tomorrow morning. I've got that job interview at the city hall at 11:30. Yeah. I know, Ron mumbled as he reached forward and pulled a pair of shorts out of the laundry basket. It would have been better if my dad would have scheduled that interview for before daylight. But we might have cloudy skies tomorrow anyhow, with as much snow as we've been getting. Belinda interrupted as she struggled to hold her hug as Ronnie lifted one leg to put his shorts on. That's exactly what I was about to say. You got breakfast going yet? Ron asked as he reached out, again, towards the basket. As his eyes tried to adjust to the brightness of the bedroom light, his eyes began to water, causing his vision to blur enough to hide the fact that Eddie was standing in the doorway. As Belinda noticed his presence, she quickly turned her head to find Eddie's finger up to his lips, as a gesture for her to not give away his attempt to scare Ronnie. A back-and-forth gag that had started about 3 months prior. Yeah. Nothing special though, some dry cereal with toast on the side. Your brother just went down to the grocery store to get some eggs, more bread, and some more milk. Standing up, with Ronnie, Belinda lightly tugged on his arm as an attempt to help him up. Did he drive or fly? Ron asked as he carefully bent forward so that he could pull the pant legs, to his jeans, up far enough to button the fly. Fly. Eddie screamed and then flew about 15 feet through the air as he suddenly tackled his friends from behind. Without falling completely to the floor, both Ronnie and Eddie wrestled together as they hovered about 3 feet off of the carpeted room. As Belinda watched, with her hand over her mouth, the horseplay appeared to be just the same as 2 high school students wrestling in school, but only with a cushion of air under them rather than a padded mat. Seconds later, with the sudden sound of excitement, both Nicole and Lucifer walked in as the wrestling match only escalated in volume and excitement. Uncle Ronnie is winning Aunt Belinda. Lucifer screeched as he excitedly pointed at Ron and Eddie. As the 19-month-old laughed, a couple incisor teeth showed between the nearly 3/4-inch long canines. Then, just before Belinda could respond to Lucifer's statement, her attention was suddenly drawn to the bedroom window as a sudden squeak, along with an image being drawn in its steam, caught her off guard, almost causing her to jump. As she focused her eyes on the sheet of frosted glass, she could make out the words "Close the curtains." I wish that they would pay more attention to the fact that people can see through this window when the lights are on, Sterling said as he watched Lloyd act as though he was refereeing the wrestling match. Lloyd was on his knees, beside Ronnie and Eddie, watching to see how close the guy's shoulder blades were to the floor. Holding his hand high into the air, he would begin to act as though he was hitting the floor each time that Eddie was within an inch or so from making contact. Once in a while you can see Mrs. Alberts, across the street, looking out her window. Sometimes it seems like she's looking this way. As Sterling finished his sentence, he saw James come into the room, with a big smile on his face. "Did you say that my mom was looking over here?" James asked as he walked into the room. James had been in Lucifer's room, playing around, up until the child had left and then screeched loudly. "She isn't right now, James. I'm just saying that sometimes she does, and so I don't think that it would be a good idea for the curtains to be wide open when the guys are hovering so far off of the ground." With the hint taken, Belinda quickly pulled the cords, along the side of the narrow window, as the curtain instantly hid the bedroom from the rest of the world. "Okay guys. Chill out a little before you wake up the neighbors." It was only a few minutes later when Malachi had gotten home. As he reached the top of the stairs, small amounts of snow, that had collected upon his shoulders and head, had began to melt and drip into his face. "Hi guys. I think that we have everything." "Well, let me see, honey," Nicole said as she grabbed a couple of the bags out of his hands. "Paper. Honey, isn't it easier to fly with plastic bags?" "Yeah. But I thought that I should try walking for a change. After a while it almost becomes an issue of rather if I'm gonna start to forget the basic steps of development or not." Malachi finished and then handed the last couple bags of groceries to Eddie as he came into the kitchen. Looking up, towards his elder, he watched the faint fog around them as it seemed to swirl like a mini tornado off into the distance. "Do you understand me, boy?" Yeah. Yes, I do understand, sir." The lad responded as another cloud of fog poured into the darkness. Periodically he would make a small second of eye contact, and then immediately veer his attention elsewhere. Never in his 12 years of life did he ever imagine that he would one day actually confront the old man. The old man within his dreams that only chased people, not himself though. Just other people. Kids. The old man was always chasing someone's kid. "Boy. You are my only daughter, son. And it is through you that I will once again have control and power over all the people beneath me. Your name. It's so perfect. And you're a child." "But grandfather. I don't understand what you want me to do." "But, you just say the word and I'll do whatever you ask of me. Consider me as your angel." Once again, the child focused his eyes on those of his grandfather's. Then, like a snap of a finger, he was waking up within his own room. It was about 11 o'clock when Belinda had finished getting ready for her interview. The 16-hour stretch, from waking up the previous night, had worn her out as she attempted to put Lucifer to bed before sunrise. Losing the battle, she decided to put him in bed with Ron. With this, the child quickly fell asleep. "I'll be back soon, honey. Hopefully you'll be awake when I get home." "Don't count on it. I'm forcing my eyelids to stay open now. Look at my face a little closer, you'll see toothpicks." With this, Ronnie closed his eyes as a grin stretched across his face. "Well, in that case, I'll let you keep sleeping. I'll quietly crawl into bed with you too when I get home." Without another word, Belinda bent over the bed and kissed both Ron and Lucifer on the forehead. Then, after grabbing her keys and purse, she quickly headed down to the garage to warm up Malachi's and Nicole's Hummer. Showing up about 5 minutes early, David came out into the waiting area of the city hall. "Hey Belinda. Come on back here with me." Saying this, Dave led the way down a short hallway and then into the first office along the left side of the hall, right in here. Allowing Belinda into the office first, David held the office door open as the 17-year-old found herself with an empty desk, with a computer on it, a printer, scanner, file cabinets, and a "That's my name on that." Pointing at a nameplate, centered on the edge of the desk, Belinda saw her name, Belinda Roz, etched into its plastic piece. "Yep." David interrupted. "And this will also be your office." Walking the rest of the way into the office, David pulled open a drawer, within the desk, and then pulled out a piece of paper. "All that we need you to do today, Belinda, is to fill out these tax papers." Pausing, David looked at Belinda as a look of confusion was deeply set within her entire face. "Belinda, we really needed a new secretary, you really need a job, and I'm your best reference. You're hired. Also, I really want what is best for you and my son. Malachi and Nicole are on the right track, and so now it's yours and Ronnie's chance to also be on the right track." "Well, thank you, David. I just don't know what to say," Belinda said as she began to look more relaxed. "Just say that you'll be here from 6 o'clock in the morning through 3 o'clock, Monday through Friday, and thank you," David said as he handed the papers to her with a pen. "Yes, and thank you," Belinda said, and then took her purse off of her shoulder and then went to set it on the floor when David quickly reached out to grab a hold of it. "Belinda. You can set that on your desk, or anywhere else within your office that you choose. Just relax and fill out the papers. When you're done, just bring them back out to me at the front desk or leave them here on the desk. Also." Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out 2 sets of keys, one that must have had at least 50 keys on it. She knew that they were David's personal keys because she had seen them many times before, and then one that had perhaps about 20 to 30 keys. "This set of keys is yours. You can put the house keys on the ring if you would like. Just please don't lose them." After about a half hour, Belinda finished filling out the papers and then took them directly to David, just as he had suggested. After another thank you, she was soon headed home with a big grin on her face. This wasn't only Belinda's first job but also a job that she knew that she would enjoy. Not to mention good pay for a 17-year-old. Walking back into the house, after parking the Hummer back in the garage, she quietly walked through the basement towards Eddie's room to tell him the good news. When she quietly opened the bedroom door, however, she quickly found that he was asleep. Normal for that particular time of day. Moments later, Belinda went upstairs and found that Ronnie, Lucifer, Malachi, and Nicole were still asleep. With this finding, she then decided that it was time to move Lucifer into his own room and then go to bed as well. "You may be my nephew, buddy, but it's time that I get some very much needed sleep too," she whispered into the sleeping child's ear. It was a dark haze as he opened his eyes. Bending over slightly, so that he could look under the blanketed layer of fog, Lucifer carefully held onto one side of his diaper. In the distance he could hear the all-too-familiar voice of the old man that had often frightened him in his sleep. It was different this time. Different in the fact that the old man seemed to be addressing someone as he spoke. Curious. Lucifer felt curious in the difference of setting of which he wasn't being chased. Moving slow, with one hand out in front of himself, so that he wouldn't run into anything, and then the other hand still holding the edge of the diaper that was starting to come undone, Lucifer walked towards the voice that he would normally be running away from. Then, as he looked through a twisted pattern of fogged layers, he saw the silhouette of 2 figures standing in a darkened corner. "Now that your mother has passed away, you've got to keep your mind focused on what I need you to do. Do you understand me?" the elder man said to the younger. "But I miss my parents." "Stop," the old man snapped loudly. "You need to keep your mind on the tasks ahead of you, boy. Do you?" "Yes," the young man answered through anger. Instantly the old man raised his hand, like as if he was gonna swing at the kid. Then suddenly paused as he immediately turned his head towards Lucifer. "Do you hear that? Someone is here with us," the old man said, then turned to face Lucifer's direction and lowered his hand. "Yeah. I can hear someone breathing." With this, Lucifer turned quickly and began to run as he continued to hold onto the untapped side of his pamper. It seemed however that the faster that he moved the faster that, not only one set, but rather two set of feet had began to catch up on him. Then, just as he could almost feel a person's body heat over his shoulder, he suddenly tripped and landed on his chest. "Wah! Help me, mommy! Wah!" As Lucifer screamed he turned over, onto his side, and covered his face with his hands. "Help me, Dada! Help!" Turning over quickly, at the sound of his son screaming, Malachi suddenly found himself falling off of the edge of the bed. With instant reflexes he came within inches off of the floor, then stopped, midair, at about 4 inches from the carpeting. Then, seconds later was racing through his door and then into Lucifer's bedroom. "It's all right, Lucifer," Malachi said as he picked his screaming son off of the mattress. As he raised his son into his arms he quickly found his son to be partially entangled within his diaper as it was only fastened on one side. "It's gonna be all right." "What's going on?" Nicole asked as she walked into the room. "You just about scared me to death," she continued, and then hugged her husband from behind as she kissed Lucifer on the forehead. "Another nightmare. Almost time for me to have one. It's been a while," he continued as he turned, within Nicole's arms, to face her. Then, lifting his left hand, behind her back, he looked at his watch. "Well, looks like that the sun must have just went down." Then, as he looked over Lucifer's head, he looked out the window. "So much snow falling out there we have to look at a clock to tell the difference between day and night." "Well, it is winter time, dear," Nicole answered as she continued to hold on to her hug. "I wonder how Belinda's interview went this morning." "Well, go ahead and wake them up. We might as well stay up and make breakfast now," Malachi suggested. "I'll go ahead and make French toast. Everyone will like that better than plain old cereal." "Sounds good to me," Nicole said, and then carefully pried their son off of her husband's shutter. "I'll go and wake the guys up." Then, both Nicole and Malachi walked out of the room. About a half hour later, as everyone was sitting around the table, Nicole interrupted a moment of silence. "Hey Belinda. How did your interview go this morning at the city hall?" "It went great." Instantly, as Nicole asked the question, Belinda's face went from extremely tired looking to immediate excitement as she had also reached over and grabbed a hold of Ronnie's hand. "David brought me into an office, of which I thought was just where I was gonna do my interview, all along. However, it turned out to be where I would be working. This office was my office with my nameplate on the desk, my own desk. In all that I had to do, today, is fill out some tax forms." "Well, that's great, Belinda," Ronnie said as he pulled her hand completely over to himself and then held it to his chest. "When do you start?" "Monday morning. Starting at 6 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon." As Belinda finished she noticed that everyone, except Lucifer, who seemed to be in another world as he pushed a piece of sausage through his syrup, had looks of joy growing on their faces as Belinda went on and on about her job that she had been hoping very much for. "I knew that you would get it." Malachi spoke up. "My dad had been kinda excited about it since you showed interest in the position." "Yeah, he had," Eddie agreed as he reached towards the center of the table for more French toast. "In fact, I've even heard Ronnie's and Malachi's mom talking about it too. She was talking about it when our parents came over to celebrate my mom's birthday the day before yesterday," Malachi said, and then stood up as he picked his and Lucifer's empty plate off of the table and headed towards the kitchen sink. "Well, that's both of the women in this home working now. I guess that it's time for Ronnie, Eddie, and I to get jobs too." "Yeah, right," Nicole interrupted. "You guys can't be out in the daylight, which means that you would have to have a job that starts after 9 o'clock at night. You would have to be, not only gone, but at home before 6 o'clock in the morning. Distance from home wouldn't really matter, you guys can outfly any time limit. Jobs, in this world, don't start prior to 11 o'clock at night. Most third shift jobs start at either 11 o'clock or midnight and then get out at either 7 or 8. This is beyond 6 o'clock in the morning and no normal employer is gonna make an exception for a single employee." Okay. Malachi interrupted as he returned to the table. "It's not that much of an issue. You know, Nicole." Ronnie spoke up. "Actually it tends to be an issue at times when we know that we should be putting a fair share into helping out at home. It's like you, and now Belinda, are bringing all of the money home and all we do is take care of Lucifer, clean the house. Nicole began. Cook the meals, and you guys all make this a family setting that makes Belinda and I look forward to each and every day. Yeah. Belinda interrupted. Things here are a lot different than what you would expect in any other household. But those differences are differences that we can't change. Not to mention changes that we wouldn't want. Eddie, Ronnie, and Malachi. We love you guys very much and we don't want anything with you guys to change. We love what you do for us. And regardless what you think, you're doing more than share, and we love you guys for that. Well, that's about as close to an argument than what we've heard in a long time. Sterling said as he stood next to Lucifer's high chair, the last time that we've heard this much stress is after Ronnie told his mom that Malachi had been shot. That's when they killed Eric Myers in Arizona. James agreed. Karina was pissed. Well, Lloyd interrupted, that's cool that Belinda got that job. She's really been hoping for that. Yeah, she has. James agreed. But I'm more worried about this nightmare that Lucifer had tonight. Who was there with Miguel? Looking into Lloyd's and Sterling's face, James seemed to be looking for an answer. I don't know. Lloyd said. Between the time of Lucifer waking up through breakfast, Lloyd had made an attempt to forget the events within Lucifer's nightmare. The addition of another demonic being within the dreams was just too much to swallow, and in addition that caused a high level of fear in what the future might hold. I saw just as much as Lucifer did. Just as you guys did. Miguel. And a young boy. A couple weeks had passed as Belinda had gotten herself into a routine that everyone else was soon used to. For the most part, with an exception that Belinda had slightly less sleep than Ronnie, she was home for most of the time that Ron was awake. Nicole, as she still worked with the Craig Police Department, had worked similar hours as Belinda, therefore sharing lunchtime together either at home, the city hall, or a nearby restaurant. At the end of the evening, both Belinda and Nicole headed off to bed beside those that they loved. Often Belinda and Nicole averaged about 6 to 7 hours of sleep per day while Malachi, Ronnie, and Eddie would average 10 to 15 hours of sleep. Hey honey, Ronnie said shortly after he had woken up and made breakfast for everyone else. Belinda. Time to get up now. What's going on, Ronnie? Belinda asked as she slowly opened her eyes. As she focused her eyes, she realized that Ronnie was kneeling beside the bed staring at her with a weird smile on his face. You. And me. With this, Ronnie slowly crept up onto the mattress as he continued to keep a suspicious-looking smile. Alone. Ronnie. What are you doing? Belinda asked as she began to slowly understand Ron's intentions. I can hear everyone else in the kitchen. We're not alone. You're right. But everyone out there knows to leave us alone for the next few hours. And, pausing as he continued to climb up onto the bed, I think that we have some unfinished business. Okay honey. Belinda started to say as she fought to hide a smile, what unfinished business are you talking about? Playing it off, Belinda pretended that she was trying to hide under her blanket. Okay, Sterling and James. Ronnie's undressed, he's flirting with her, he's playfully climbing into bed. Pausing for a moment, Lloyd realized that his words weren't even fazing his two friends. Sterling and James. Spinning real quickly in one place, both Sterling and James turned to stare at Lloyd near the bedroom door. What's up, Lloyd? Time to go. Now. Lloyd continued as he pointed at the door. With Sterling leading the way and Lloyd following them, they quickly disappeared into the kitchen. Something that I think that you'll be happy about. As he finally got all the way onto the mattress, Ronnie began to lightly tug on the quilt that partially covered her face. Something that you'll really enjoy, Ronnie continued, and then quickly jerked the quilt out of her grip. Slowly and carefully Ron laid on Belinda as they immediately turned over to where Ronnie was on his back and Belinda was on top. I love you, Ronnie, Belinda said, and then locked her lips on his as they both held each other close. I love you too, Belinda. Ron responded and then spread his legs apart, allowing her to lay between them. As they continued to hold on to each other, Belinda slowly inched her panties down her legs and then used one foot to take them off the rest of the way. After about 20 minutes, and Ronnie had completely relaxed, he carefully held his own body weight up on his right hand as he then uses his left hand to pull her up off of the pillow from under her neck. With her head now up off of the pillow, limp within his grasp, he bent his head down and landed a kiss on her lips and then immediately stuck his canines deep into the soft tissues of her neck. "I love you, Ronnie," Belinda said, and then immediately lost consciousness. Stepping out of the room, Ronnie left Belinda laying in bed as he walked out into the kitchen. "Well, hi there, Ronnie," Eddie said as he turned when a floorboard creaked in the entryway. "By the smile on your face, I'd say that something good just happened in there." "Yeah. Or at least is happening," Ronnie said as he tried to hint to what had just taken place. To increase the hint, Ronnie looked over his own shoulder and towards his and Belinda's bedroom door, like as if he wanted Eddie to go and investigate on his own. "What do you mean?" Eddie asked as he finished pouring himself a cup of coffee. Before Ronnie could answer, Malachi, Nicole, and Lucifer came out into the kitchen from the living room. "Yeah, Ronnie. What do you mean at least is happening?" Malachi asked. With his brother's question, Malachi began to walk between Ron and the exit of the kitchen, down the hallway, and towards the first bedroom. "Come on, Ron." Turning to face Malachi, as he now had a hand on the bedroom door handle. Ronnie knew that he had to stop anyone from finding Belinda naked. "Stop, Malachi," Ron said. "Belinda isn't dressed and she is unconscious." "Ronnie," Nicole interrupted as she came up to Ron's side, "did you in?" "Yes. And she is undressed on the bed. Let me slip in there and cover her before you guys see her." With this said, Malachi moved out of the way to allow his brother into the room. Quickly Ronnie slipped in and then, about 2 minutes later, okayed the way for everyone else's entry. "Well, now she is officially one of us, Ronnie. Good job," Malachi said as he hugged his little brother from the side. With this, Nicole and Eddie, holding Lucifer, were soon by Ron's side as well. "Let's let her sleep, guys. Ron, you should stay with her. She may have her first major nightmare during this period of time. It would be helpful to her, if you were here for her." "That's all that you were worried about us seeing?" James asked Lloyd as they stood behind Ronnie, Nicole, Eddie, and Malachi. "Now why would you be worried about us seeing someone being infected? There's no shame in that process." "James. It's not the fact that Belinda was about to be infected that I was worried about, it was what they were about to do before that," Lloyd said. "Yeah, James." Sterling agreed, "They were about to have sex and you're not exactly old enough." "Sterling." James interrupted, "According to you I will never be old enough because of how old I was when I died. Now, I'd have you know that once, while I was still alive, I walked through the city park bare naked while the park was crowded with people." "Correction, James." Lloyd jumped in, "You walked halfway through the park and then Malachi came to your rescue. You were terrified and what does this incident have to do with sex anyhow? What do either one of you know about sex?" Sterling asked. "You two were about the same age when you died." Lloyd. "You were 8 and James, you died on your 5th birthday. Come on now." "Yeah, come on now, Sterling. You were 16 years old when you died and up to that point, and still today, you're a virgin." "What's a virgin?" James interrupted Lloyd. "A virgin is someone. Never mind, guys. I just think that being that Malachi, Ronnie, Nicole, Eddie, Lucifer, and Belinda are our friends that we should give them enough respect to leave them alone when they are doing anything other than sleeping in their beds." As Lloyd finished he turned to leave the room. Then, just as he got to the door, he turned back towards James and Sterling. "Come on." In a softer tone of voice, his conscience immediately made him regret his bit of attitude, "Let's go play in Lucifer's room." Following close behind Lloyd, James looked up to the top of Ronnie's and Belinda's dresser and saw a hairbrush laying on its side. Reaching up, with one hand, he closed his eyes quickly as he hit the handle, causing the brush to suddenly spin in one spot. Seconds later he was out of the room. Just as Malachi, Nicole, Eddie, and Lucifer were about to leave the room, just as Eddie put his hand on the door handle, a brush, on the nearby dresser, suddenly began to spin out of control. As it got closer to the edge of the dresser's edge, it fell off and landed on the floor next to Malachi's foot. Bending down to his left knee, Malachi quickly grasped the object. With the brush in his hand, Malachi seemed to look up into the open air around him. "Watch over Belinda Sterling, James, and Lloyd. She's gonna need our support." It was on the last day of January that an ongoing question, within Malachi's mind, had finally come out in words. Also, unknown to Malachi, the same question had been in everybody's mind. Why? And how is Spud still alive? Malachi. This is why you've called over here so early in the morning? Really Malachi, I don't know why he's still alive. What is he now, 22 years old? Yeah, Mom. He's 22 and thinks that he's still a puppy. Malachi had allowed the question to weigh on his mind so much that on the morning of the 31st he had decided to stay awake long enough to make a call to his mom's and ask the big question. Deciding that it would be too hard for him to stay awake much longer, he waited until after Nicole and Belinda had left to work to call. This decision was made knowing that he would most likely be waking his mother up. Well, I don't know, Malachi. I'll pass the question by your grandmother and see what she says. Until then, honey, please come up with a better time frame to call, Karina said as she was still laying in bed. All right, Mom. I'm sorry for waking you up. It's just got to the point that the question is obsessing my thought process. Like I said though, I'm sorry for waking you up. It's alright, Malachi. Just remember to call after you guys wake up. I'm usually still awake then. Okay, honey. I love you. Call me tonight, alright? Okay, Mom. I love you too, I'll talk to you later. As Malachi heard the click on the other end of the line, he held the phone to his chest. I wish that I had remembered that she would have been asleep. He thought to himself and then, seconds later, hit the disconnect button on the Samsung Galaxy phone. As Malachi headed back to bed, he quietly checked on Lucifer before heading back into his own room. Ronnie and Eddie had gone to bed just after Nicole and Belinda had left for work. Now, as Malachi laid down on the quilt-covered mattress, the entire house was silent as he quickly dozed off to sleep. It was about 9:30 that night when Ronnie and Belinda had woken up. As Ronnie sat up on the edge of the bed, he leaned forward as he pulled a pair of boxers out of the basket of clean clothes. Then, rather than putting them on immediately, he balled the shorts up, in his hand, as he stood up and opened the bedroom door. Before stepping out the door, however, Ronnie stuck his head out the door and looked to see if anyone else was awake. Seconds later, Ron darted across the hallway into the bathroom. Setting his boxers on the double sink counter, he quickly pulled out a clean towel and wash rag, then jumped into the shower. Hearing the shower turn on, Belinda slowly sat up on the edge of the mattress and stretched. Over the last week and a half, she had considered herself to be lucky that she hadn't had any nightmares, yet she had known some details of the other guy's dreams through some of her own. More than once, in fact perhaps about a half-dozen times, she had dreams that involved her waking up inside of a thick fogged, darkened, dungeon-like place. In the distance she could hear, what sounded like to her, an old man along with a young male talking to each other in the far distance. In the foreground of these dreams there was a man, about her own age. She couldn't see the face very well, however, she had felt that his presence was extremely protective. Along with this, there was also a young boy and a young girl about the same age. This man, and the two young children, of whom she had never heard any voices out of, were all of Hispanic origin. Standing up, Belinda put on a nightgown and then headed out to the kitchen. Dumping out the coffee that was left over from hers and Nicole's lunch break earlier that day, she quickly refilled the coffee machine and then replaced the coffee filter along with fresh coffee grounds. Before pouring the grounds into the new filter, Belinda took a deep sniff of the grounds, almost stimulating her as much as the brewed coffee would. It was routine for Ronnie to jump into the shower before anyone else. It was partially his intention to just get it out of the way without delaying it. Usually, a delayed shower turned out to be a day without a shower. To avoid this situation, it was the first thing that he would do. As Ronnie stepped out of the shower, he stood in front of the double sink and then reached forward, with his towel, to wipe the steam off of the mirror. After removing the cap to the toothpaste, Ronnie put about an inch worth on his small brush and then set the nearly half-empty tube close to the wall. As he began to brush his teeth, in a circular motion, as he was taught from early age, the tube itself suddenly flipped over, startling Ron. Then, just a split second later, the dental floss container, that was in the corner, suddenly jumped out towards him. Simultaneously, Malachi's toothbrush began to hover close to Ronnie's face, pointed at him just as if someone was pointing their finger at him. "Lloyd, don't hit him with it," James said as he pulled his hand back from flicking the dental floss with his finger. "But we need them to do a seance today. I figure that, since we know the truth about Spud, and it's not really crossing the lines of playing God, that perhaps we should talk to them about it." With this said, Lloyd set Malachi's toothbrush down and then grabbed the handle to the water faucet and then began to turn it on and off. "Hey guys," Sterling said suddenly as he walked in, "what's going on in here?" Sterling was a bit surprised by what he was seeing. Ronnie standing in front of the sink. Looked like that perhaps he was brushing his teeth. At least he was holding his toothbrush. James was standing in front of the counter to Ronnie's right and Lloyd was perched on the counter to Ron's left as he was turning the handles to the sink. "I thought that we were gonna leave the guys alone when they're naked, Lloyd." "No. I said when they're in bedroom doing anything other than sleeping," Lloyd said as he jumped down off of the cabinet. "I'm trying to get the guys to do a seance with us today so that we can talk to them about Spud." "Spud? Lloyd, at least wait until he's out of the bathroom. You're gonna drive the guys batty if you invade them in here." Then, as Sterling was about to leave the bathroom, he stopped and looked back at Lloyd. "Hey. Let's go wake Eddie up, Belinda's making breakfast anyhow." "I got an idea." James spoke up, "You guys go get Eddie and I'll go get Malachi." "No. That wouldn't be a good idea. Malachi and Nicole are both in bed and they're not asleep," Sterling said. "Let's all just go downstairs." Standing back up, after pulling some grapefruit out of a lower shelf in the refrigerator, Belinda set them on the kitchen counter as she pulled out a long-bladed knife. Seconds later she turned to pull toast out of the toaster and then, moments afterwards, added more eggs and sausage to the frying pan on the stove. Getting herself caught up in being busy, she wasn't even aware that Ronnie had come out of the bathroom and was standing directly behind her, only wearing boxers. "Hi honey." "Oh hi honey. I didn't even hear you come into the kitchen. I think that I have slightly forgotten how to cook. It seems like that there is more work involved in this little meal than what I remembered." Stopping for a moment, Belinda stared at Ronnie as he had an odd look on his face. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. It seems to me that Lloyd, James, and Sterling are really in the need of a seance. That's the only thing that I can think of anyhow. They were really trying to get my attention in the bathroom." Walking up to Belinda, Ronnie gave her a hug along with a kiss. "I love you." "I love you too honey." Letting go of Ronnie, she quickly stepped back to flip the eggs. Distinctively, Ronnie followed her and took over. Within about 20 minutes, Eddie, Malachi, Nicole, and Lucifer were all sitting around the table and ready to eat. "Ah guys," Eddie said just as he served himself more sausage. "I have reason to believe that it would be a good idea to have a seance tonight. I think that Lloyd, James, and Sterling are really trying to hint it on to me that we need to talk." "I know what you mean," Malachi interrupted. "The second that Nicole and I came out of the bedroom, a little while ago, one of them slammed the door shut behind us and then opened Lucifer's bedroom door." Next to Malachi, Nicole's facial expressions were confirming his words. "Yeah. I was attacked by your toothbrush this morning," Ron said with a slight grin on his face. "Hi Uncle Lloyd." Lucifer spoke up. "Lloyd, James, and Sterling. As soon as we're done eating breakfast, meet us down in my bedroom for a seance." With this Eddie stood and took his dishes to the sink. "Take your time guys." "Ah yeah. Later I've got to call my mom," Malachi announced. "Please remind me Nicole. I've got to call her before she goes to bed." For the most part Malachi had only said this to change the current atmosphere in the kitchen. There wasn't a problem with Lloyd, James, and Sterling living in the home there would, most likely, never be a problem with that. The problem is that it wasn't very often that James, Lloyd, and Sterling were choosing to do a seance. Normally either Malachi, Ronnie, Nicole, Belinda, or Eddie came up with the idea. Everyone, except Lucifer, was wondering if something was wrong. The more persistent that Lloyd, James, and Sterling were, the more the kitchen's atmosphere turned into worry. Soon everyone was downstairs and sitting in a circle, around candles that Eddie had within a star, that he previously thumbtacked down to the floor. As everyone was settled, Eddie stood up to turn off the bedroom light. Shortly afterwards everyone's attention was on the flickers of light on the surrounding walls and faces of everyone in the room. We are gathered here today to speak to our friends James, Lloyd, and Sterling. Eddie was secretly worried that their ghostly friends might have tragic news for them. With our gathering we are hoping that your guys' persistence isn't indication of an emergency. Please show yourselves to us. Hey guys. A demonic voice, with Lloyd's face, began, actually what we need to talk with you guys about isn't a matter of an emergency, or anything else urgent for that matter. What I've got to talk to you about is in regards to a question that has been sitting very heavy on all of your minds. What's that? Nicole asked as she positioned herself and now she was holding Lucifer. Spud. Suddenly, just with the dog's name being mentioned, everyone was instantly on the same page. Guys, any dog that is owned by a male vampire is called a Hound of Hell. As a Hound of Hell, Spud will live just as long as his human best friend. Malachi. Lloyd said suddenly as he had also turned to face Malachi. Malachi, you own Spud and as long as you are alive Spud will remain alive as well. Part of being a vampire Malachi is that there are several predestined missions within your lives. Missions to protect your mothers prior to birth, missions to protect your wives and or girlfriends. With this said Lloyd turned to face Belinda, and then, your dogs even have predestined missions as well. Those missions involve protecting its owner and everything else that its owner guards close to his heart, such as his children, his mother, his wife, or girlfriend, and his owner's house or home. So, Ronnie interrupted, if I were to buy a dog for Lucifer, that dog will live forever? No, Ronnie. That dog would live only as long as Lucifer. Sometimes, Ronnie, I think that you forget that you are not invincible to everything in this world. It's important that you remember that you are not invincible. You can and will end up losing your life if you forget that. All right. Malachi interrupted, so Lloyd, how are you guys doing lately? We're doing okay, Malachi, and I see that you guys are doing or pretty well also. Turning to face Ronnie again he continued, congratulations Ronnie and Belinda, now, Belinda, you're officially part of the family. Pausing, Lloyd began to slowly rotate in a circle as he looked at everyone in the face. Alright guys, I'll talk to you later. It's James' turn to talk now. What's up guys? James asked. His voice seemed to have immediately kicked in rather than the demonic voice that would usually be heard at the very beginning of a seance. Not much, James. Eddie answered, it's been a while since we've talked, man. You, Lloyd, and Sterling staying out of trouble? Well, of course we are. We can't really do anything wrong living inside the house for all of eternity. We argue about stupid things once in a while, we watch out for you guys. Sterling is still teaching Lucifer, and we still like having some regular contact with you guys through seances. James. Anything new happening? Nicole asked. Actually. Yes. James said as he turned to face Nicole and Lucifer. Nicole, I don't know what is up, but something is happening within the dreams with Lucifer. Turning slightly towards Belinda, he continued, and a little within Belinda's dreams as well. What do you mean? Belinda asked. With her question, Nicole also had a look of worry on her face. The old man, that everyone else has within their dreams, isn't in mine. That's a bad thing? No, Belinda. Belinda, what details do you remember about your dreams? James asked as she started to think real hard. I don't know. There is a lot of thick fog, a dirty floor within what looks like a dungeon. Voices. In the distance I can hear voices. Pausing, Belinda uncovered her eyes and looked back towards James. And it's within those voices that I'm talking about, Belinda. James said, That young boy's voice. Instantly Belinda recovered her face as James revealed a detail of her dreams that she hadn't mentioned. But James, Belinda continued, in my dreams I also see two young children, about the same age, playing together. No, Belinda. For you and Ronnie, those two children will always be there. I'm talking about the young boy's voice that you hear in the background. The one talking with the old man. Lucifer has recently seen this young boy. He could be friends with the old man or just some sort of a servant. The other day Lucifer walked up to Miguel Sanchez, in his dream, not right up to him but close enough to see the boy that Miguel was talking to. James. What's up with this boy that you're talking about? Is he gonna hurt Lucifer? Nicole asked as worry quickly sunk into her after hearing James talk about the boy. Nicole. I don't know what's up with this boy. I can give you information about him as we learn more, however, we can only learn from your dreams. Therefore, when you do have your nightmares, you really need to remember any details surrounding him. All that we know is that this boy cannot be a good thing based off of the fact that he is cool with Miguel Sanchez. Just be careful with the choices that you make within your dreams. Hi guys. Sterling said all of a sudden, well, I'm not gonna let this take too long. Malachi told his mother this morning that he would call her and it would probably be a good idea for him to do this before she goes to sleep. Hi Sterling, Lucifer said as he almost got up out of his mother's lap to walk towards the hologram image. We built a hose today. No, Lucifer. We built a house today, not a hose. Looking at Malachi, Sterling justified what they were talking about. Today, Lucifer and I built a house out of Legos. In fact, we built your guy's house. Well, that's cool, Eddie said. Are you, James, and Lloyd able to play board games at all? No. Or actually, we probably could, but we haven't tried. Most likely it would be hard for us to play board games. We do play, however, with Power Rangers. Pausing, Sterling turned to look at Malachi. Malachi, I've got to get going now. You call your mom and keep on your toes about waking Lucifer up from his nightmares. We don't know anything about this character, he could be dangerous. Alright Sterling, we'll do. And you guys take care. Malachi finished and then immediately, Sterling's image disappeared. It was about 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day of 2021, that Ronnie came up with a big lifelong decision. He had known for many years, since about the age of 6, that his parents had married on Valentine's Day. Throughout the past few years, ever since he had felt that he was in love with Belinda, he had been cooking up an idea of how the perfect marriage proposal could be played out. Infecting Belinda, a month prior, put this thought all into stone. The last key point to this proposal was just doing it. With this, he figured that a proposal now would be efficient amount of time to plan for their wedding date a year later. If she says yes. He thought to himself. Hey Malachi. Ronnie called out just moments after Nicole and Belinda headed out the door for work. After the two women pulled out of the driveway, Malachi had immediately V-lined it towards the bedroom to go to bed. Yeah, Ron? Malachi had his hand on the door handle to the room and was wearing only one shoe as the other had fallen off. Turning to face his brother, he held his other shoe in his hand. I want to do something today that I would like your help with. Possibly Eddie's as well. What's that? Malachi had a slight puzzled look on his face, yet at the same time he seemed to have possibly already known that it wasn't something bad. Within his puzzled appearance he seemed to have a slight amount of excitement as well. I wanted to do something special for Belinda today. And the reason that I hadn't said anything about it earlier is because I wasn't yet so sure of exactly how I wanted to do it. Do what, Ronnie? Malachi asked, as an inquisitive look, on his face, became more defined. Also, Malachi quickly used his bare foot to remove the other shoe. After removing the shoe, he bent over, picked it up, and then placed both shoes just inside the room. I would like to. Pausing for a moment, I would like to propose to her today when they come home for lunch. Well, that's a great idea, Ronnie. How do you want to say it? Or do it for that matter? Immediately Malachi was excited for his brother. Instantly his mind went back to different moments within Ronnie's past. Kinda like snapshot photos. Different important instances that had evolved Ronnie into who he was today. Some of his greatest memories of his brother are those events that Ronnie had periodically requested Malachi's presence or help. Malachi had also, like magic, found himself to be completely regenerated. I don't know. I just want it to be different. I want it to be something that she will remember for the rest of her life. I've got an idea. Malachi interrupted, how about I call Dad and see if he has any suggestions? Since the girls just left, there shouldn't be any way for Belinda's surprise to be spoiled. Okay. How about Mom? Ronnie asked. We'll let Dad call Mom and Grandma Sanchez to get them involved. I'm on a bad record with Mom by calling too early in the morning and waking her. You think that we should wake Eddie up? Ron questioned as he looked down the flight of stairs, towards the front door of the house. Nope. Eddie's voice seemed to have popped out from nowhere. I'm on my way upstairs right now. Pausing, as he climbed up the stairs, Eddie fought to put a t-shirt on, and had stopped on the landing before the upper flight of stairs to do so. Ronnie, it's about time that you decided to do this. I was beginning to think that you weren't gonna do it. Eddie finished just as he got his arms through the correct holes of the shirt. Thank you guys, Ronnie said. I sorta knew that you guys would support me on my decision. I just didn't know that you guys would be this eager to help me, Ronnie said as Eddie carefully wrapped his arms around Ron for a hug. Okay guys. Malachi interrupted, I'm gonna call over to the city hall right now. With this Malachi walked into the kitchen and picked a cell phone up off of the table. Ronnie. I'm using your phone, okay? That's alright, Ron said and then followed Eddie into the kitchen as well. Craig City Hall. This is David DeClue, how may I help you? David said as he quickly took off his coat. Dad, this is Malachi. Oh, hi Malachi. Everything alright over there? It wasn't usual for Dave to receive a call so early in the morning from his kids. His first reaction was that of an emergency. Yeah. Actually Dad, everything is going great. Dad, we need your help on something. Well. Sure Malachi. What's going on? David asked and then sat down behind the counter that had served as his desk for nearly 20 years. Just a little while ago, right after Nicole and Belinda left the house, Ronnie told me that he would like to propose to Belinda today. I was wondering if you might have any ideas of how to make this a special and unique event for them both. In the background Malachi could hear classical music through the phone. Well. This is great. Yeah, I've got a few ideas. Listen, the girls just pulled up though. I'm gonna go use another phone, where Belinda can't hear me. I'll call your mom and then I'll call right back. Okay? Alright. We'll be waiting for your call Dad, Malachi said. Tell Ronnie that I said congratulations and that I'm gonna call back in about an hour or so. Okay? Yeah. I'll tell him Dad. I'll talk to you later. Bye. With this the phone quickly disconnected as Malachi turned to look at his little brother. He'll call us back in an hour or so. It was about an hour later that David returned the phone call. He had talked to Karina about Ronnie's plans and, as expected, she was excited about the idea as well. Since the plans were on short notice, Karina had decided that hers and David's original engagement rings would be best for the occasion. This would also be a good idea for a set of rings that had only taken up space in a dresser drawer. With this plan, it was decided that David would make reason for the girls to both take their lunch break at home rather than at a restaurant. To back up the idea, Malachi made a call to Nicole, at the police department, and told her of the plans as well. With all of the plans set in motion, all Ronnie had to do is wait for Nicole and Belinda to pull up in front of the house. Seconds later, after Karina, David, and Mrs. Sanchez pulled into the drive, the surprise engagement party would take place. Until they showed up, however, Malachi, Ronnie, and Eddie would pretend that they were asleep. Well. At least the sun is shining today, Nicole said as her and Belinda pulled into the driveway. The last couple of weeks have been so full of snowfall that I was getting worried if we were gonna see the sun again or not. I know what you mean. Pausing for a moment, Belinda looked over towards Nicole. I wonder why David had to leave the office so quickly for. He rushed us out of there like as if the place was on fire or something. As they climbed out of the Hummer, the two of them filed into the front door of the yellow-painted house. Taking off their coats on the first landing, before heading up the stairs, towards the kitchen, Nicole had listened very carefully for David, Karina, and Ms. Sanchez to pop up in front of the house. Hoping that they would make their entry, just on time as Eddie, Malachi, and Ronnie would come out of their rooms. As the plans were, Nicole and Belinda would walk into the living room and then seconds later everyone would come into and wait in the kitchen for the surprise engagement celebration. Of course this plan would fail if Belinda would, at all, hear anyone pull into the driveway, Eddie come up the stairs, Ronnie himself, or Malachi come out of their rooms. So, as Nicole took her time doing so, she slowly drew Belinda's attention into the living room where they then sat down after Nicole said that she needed Belinda to look at a picture within one of the family albums. Nicole thought that this would be a way to distract both Belinda's hearing and visual movements that may be possibly made. Along with this, Nicole kept talking to Belinda to further obstruct her senses. After Belinda was seated, and Nicole had gone back out to the kitchen to get some juice for herself and Belinda and of course to see if the plans were falling into place as planned, Nicole had seen enough to know that everyone, Karina, David, Ms. Sanchez, Malachi, Eddie, Lucifer, and Ronnie were all now standing at the far end of the kitchen. To make one more check, because Nicole had also seen someone else out there as well and wondered who it was, she had seen that it was Police Chief Larry Wallace. Now, walking back into the living room for one last time, she suddenly changed the subject of their conversation, over the photo album, to Nicole needing Belinda to go check on Lucifer for her. To Belinda, she had felt that something was taking place based off of the fact that she thought Nicole was acting kinda weird. Nothing less, however. Belinda got up, off of the couch, and then immediately headed out of the living room. Then, just as Belinda turned into the kitchen, surprise! Everyone yelled at once and then began to clap hands as Belinda was lost for words. "Where did you guys all come from?" Belinda asked as she saw Ronnie standing out in front of everyone. As she kept her attention on Ronnie, he slowly stepped out of the crowd, towards her. "What's going on, Ronnie?" Belinda questioned as she wiped a tear off of her cheek. Deep in her mind she thought that she might know what was happening yet didn't want to jump to assumptions. Yet, all within a second's notice, Ronnie was standing in front of her and then kneeling on the floor. It was about this time that the tears now began to flow like a river. Before Ronnie had even said anything. "Belinda," Ronnie said as he held out a ring in a ring box, "would you please marry me?" As the words left his mouth, Belinda covered her face and nearly fell down to her own knees. Slowly, however, she was soon on her knees with her arms wrapped tightly around him. For those standing behind Belinda, they could see Ronnie's head softly rested on Belinda's shoulder as he too cried. A sight that was almost crippling if you hadn't known that they were tears of joy. In Ronnie's right hand was the ring, in its box, clenched tightly within his grip. Every few seconds Ronnie would flicker his eyelids showing his deep blue eyes that stuck out from his dark Hispanic skin and black hair. Standing behind Ronnie's back you would see Belinda resting her head lightly on Ron's shoulder as she still had her face covered with her hand. Listening carefully, you could hear the words "yes I will" come out of her mouth several times over and over. "I love you so much, Ronnie." "I love you too, Belinda." Ronnie responded as he too wiped his own face with his hands. Kneeling down beside them, Karina wrapped her arms around both of them as she tried to also wipe their faces dry. Next to Karina, Malachi also, with a tissue, wiped his baby brother's face dry as well. Along with Malachi's attempts, however, he had also hugged Ronnie and then lightly kissed him on the temple and whispered into his ear, "Congratulations, Ronnie. You've done a great job." "Thank you, Malachi," Ron said through tears. "I love you too, my brother. Thank you so much for doing this for me." With Ronnie's silent whisper, as he answered his brother, he lightly shrugged his head back towards his brother. Just short of a hug that would require him letting go of Belinda. Within just a few minutes, both Ronnie and Belinda were standing as they exchanged rings in front of their guests. With this process there was a few more tears shed, however, those moments were short-lived. Then, to end the evening in a smooth fashion, David allowed Belinda to take the rest of the evening off from work. "You two spend the rest of today, of which is Friday anyhow, and enjoy yourselves." "Hey Nicole. Larry interrupted. How about you take the rest of the evening off also? Celebrate with your family. Larry Wallace could hardly believe that Ronnie was now about to get married. He could remember life when Malachi was about to be born and a wooden rocking horse that he had made for the unborn child. Since then, he's watched both Malachi and Ronnie grow up, graduate from high school, marriage proposals, and now was about to see the younger one marry. Sometimes different events, involving the Declue family, began to become emotional for him as well. Opening his eyes, Malachi had just suddenly gone from a scene from the past, involving Ronnie's birth, to all of a sudden looking down through a dark narrow corridor that seemed to be completely full of fog, that was thick enough to not see any light at all. Could this be another nightmare? He asked himself. Where is Miguel Sanchez? As he continued to carefully walk down the dust-covered floor, he kept his face down towards the floor. Not detecting any form of light, all that Malachi could do is feel his way through the texture of the floor with his feet. Silence. Malachi had never experienced the amount of silence within a dream. No noise at all. Hey! A voice suddenly shouted out towards him from behind. What are you doing? Jumping, mid-air, facing the direction that he had come from, he found himself to be facing the young child that had been within his dreams since birth. The one young child that had been under his own wing for so many years. Now, for the first time, speaking to him. What did you say? Malachi asked. With his question, Malachi had now also realized that he knew exactly who he was looking at. A being that, in the past, had no face. A being in the past, that had no voice, until now. Lucifer. Yes, Father. It is me that you have dreamed about since you, yourself, was a child. It is me that you had been protecting since long before I had ever been thought of. Your son, Lucifer. Pausing for a moment, Lucifer turned to look away from his father, took a few steps forward and then, once again, turned to face Malachi. You do love me, right, Dad? Well. Of course I do, Lucifer. Malachi could hardly believe that this was his son. Lucifer, that he had always known since birth, was much younger than the one that he now looked down to within this dream. In this dream this child was the size of perhaps a 5-year-old. Why would you ask me if I love you, son? I have always loved you since the day you were born. I know you have, Lucifer said as he held out his hand towards his father, but it is the future that my question is in regards to, Dad. But Lucifer. Malachi interrupted, it doesn't matter what the future holds in regards to you. You are my son, and no matter what may take place down the road, you will still be my son, and I will never stop loving you for any reason. As the last few words left his mouth, David watched Lucifer, once again, turn and start to walk away from him. Wait. Lucifer, please don't go yet. I wanna ask you something. Stopping, Lucifer turned around and looked back at his father. Dad. Anything that you could ever possibly need. Now, or when I'm older, I will always be there as to the fullest extent that I can personally offer myself. With this though, I will also need you to remember our conversation. Just as Lloyd and James have told you before, when I'm 17 years old I will be revealing something about myself that a lot of parents reject their own children for. Something that a lot of people lose friends over. Something that some people have even lost their lives over. When this moment comes in my life, Dad, I'm gonna need 100% of your full support. It is this support that I will need to survive.